read anything.
Welcome to the Vintage House Show, the show that preserves and celebrates the history of house music and dance music across the globe, and certainly in the city of Chicago, the birth of house music. Today, we have one of our leading pioneers and songwriters and vocalists in the house music scene, Miss Kim Salter. Kim, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, Kim, this is a long time coming. As you are one of my sorors from my chapter, Gamma Chi, Northwestern University in Evanston. And so, Northwestern University, when I was in school, any Alpha Kappa Alpha event like this was being played. We absolutely loved you. The campus knew, even when you were gone, the campus knew that this was a soror from Northwestern University who created this song, made this song. So you were celebrated across the board, whether you knew it or not. So this is a pleasure.
Thank you. I did not know it until you told me. So thank you.
You are a legend, girl. But not only that, today is your birthday. What's up, kid?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Got that tiara on. So I know people like, if they see this late, they were like, why this girl got on a tiara? It'd be like, she just operate like that.
Well, it's not just any tiara. It's a tiara that says birthday girl.
There you go. There you go. Birthday
It's kind of hard to see, but yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to see. The angle is kind of interesting. So anyway, you went down on the camera a little bit. Put yourself back up on the camera. Did you want to do that? There you go. You're built back up on the camera. All right. So, thank you so much, Kim, again. You are a Chicago legend. You're a house music legend. You're a Chicago history legend because of those two things. But we're going to start really very, very early on in your career. Tell me where you grew up, what block you grew up on, what neighborhood you grew up in, and where'd you go to grammar school and high school? Give me the whole information, sort of the background, the origin story of Kim Salter.
I grew up on the north side. I grew up in Hype, and I grew up on different parts of the south side. So everywhere except for the west side. No diss to the west side. Just never lived there. I did attend Ray Elementary.
Where's Ray?
And in Hyde Park. Yeah, okay, Ray is on 57th and Kenwood. Okay. My grandparents owned a restaurant right across the street from Ray. And it was called The Dove on 57th Street.
Nice.
And so my mother was a teacher. My mother taught for over 45 years. Wow. And so my mom would teach at a different school. And because I started out like kindergarten, I went to South Commons and then kind of moved around. Like even in kindergarten, little known fact, people don't know this, I was on Romper Room.
No, that's the Holy Grail. That's the Holy Grail. How'd you get on Romper Room, girl? What's up?
No, I see Kim and Linda and Lauren and, everybody and their mother. But yeah, so
we all want to be on Romper Room, girl.
Love Romper Room and love my teacher, and running across on the other side just so I could watch them tape Bozo the Clown.
Oh wow!
Yeah, because it's all the same studio, WGN.
WGN.
But then there was a period of time that I went to the same school that my mother taught at. I think it was Hunter. But then I think there was a rule where I couldn't continue to go to school where she was teaching. So my mother decided to put me into Ray because it was directly across the street from where my grandparents were. So like whenever we had lunch, if I didn't want to eat lunch with my friends, I could run across the street to the restaurant. And then after school, she would pick me up, by the time, that way she wouldn't have to worry about having to, that was back then, they weren't doing the busing thing. So I would just hang out at my grandparents and then my mom would come and that's basically it. And then 8th grade, graduated, and I went to Kenwood.
Kenwood Academy. Talk to me about your first memories of music, sort of, being interested in music. How were you introduced to music? Most people are introduced to music from their siblings or their parents and its particular style. What do you remember about your first sort of memories of music, being involved in your life?
First memories of music, my dad playing a lot of music around the house. and my mother played a lot of music around that, like Motown and, all of the Temptations and, Ohio Players. She really liked that kind of music. And then my grandmother was really into classical music. So whenever she would clean, she would play Bach and Beethoven and Chopin and things of that nature. So that started it. And then when I was about 5, I started singing. And then they realized that I could actually sing and that I wasn't off key. Mm-hmm. So then when I became old enough to actually sing on a more professional level, she got me into the Chicago Children's Choir. And nice. I was in the Chicago Children's Choir starting, I think, in 5th grade.
Wow.
And then I started singing solos in the Chicago Children's Choir. And that choir, we traveled all over the United States. And then I started playing piano. She enrolled me in piano lessons. So I took piano lessons from a Russian teacher at the American Conservatory of Music.
Wow.
Downtown. Played piano all the way up until the time that I got into high school. And then she gave me a choice as to whether or not I wanted to continue. And being a teenager, I made the wrong choice and decided I didn't want to play piano anymore. I was kind of ticked off at my teacher because after playing in piano for 5 years, I was sick of playing classical music. And I had been begging her to teach me jazz, and she would not do it. She kept saying, no. You have to learn the basics, and you have to, do classical, and you have to play classical until I say you can play jazz. So that, I think, that made me lose interest.
Right.
And in hindsight, as an adult, I should have kept going with it. But
I think
I didn't.
At the same time, it is important to listen to your students and also, to suggest. I mean, I think what happens is, again, certainly Europeans believe that European music is everything and everything derives from that. When in fact, jazz is an American art form and is really probably the only true sort of from, instruments, one of those true classic American art forms, music genres. So it's too bad, but it happens sometimes. So at age 5, so they heard that you could sing. So what do you were you singing around the house?
Michael Jackson.
Yes.
I was in love with Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5, but particularly with Michael Jackson as a child. And I would mimic him, and I sounded just like him. I could sound like, like in terms of hitting all the notes. I could go really high because I in Chicago Children's Choir, I sang first soprano.
Oh, wow.
My speaking voice is low. My singing voice I can go high, or I used to be able to go really, really high. But that's where it started. And then, as I became older, of course, other artists kind of piqued my interest. In particular, Prince was my favorite. Long time, hands down favorite. So, that was like the infusion of the whole thing. And then when I got to, well, of course, you were in like my mother and my grandparents took me to church. My great-grandmother, I went to Lilydale Progressive Baptist Church.
Did you?
Yeah, in Roseland. And
I've got some good friends from Lilydale. From Lilydale.
Been around for a long time. My grandmother was the president of the Willing Workers Club, and she sang in the choir. So, of course, you have family members that sing. So, of course, it rubs off. And then, go to church with my father's parents. And, so between going to all these different churches, you start to, you sing a lot and you start singing in choir. And then when I got into high school, of course, because I sing, I joined the Kenwood Academy, the Kenwood Choir taught by Lena McLean. I was actually, unfortunately, in choir at the same time as R. Kelly. No comment. He wasn't that bad when we were kids. We were all in choir together. And of course, she had her pets. He was one of them. I was a bookworm. I had like AP classes. So, and it was, my mother being a teacher, it was all about books, 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 books.
Right.
So I didn't have time to hang out in the music room with Mr. McGlynn all the time. Now, in hindsight, I probably should have done that. Maybe I would be famous. Who knows? But I didn't do that because I was too busy studying and doing homework. And then I was in a math club, and I was in other academic things. I was in the National Honor Society and in a math club, and then, this, that, and the other. And I was captain of the pep squad, and then I ran track, and I was in all these different things.
Right.
And then they had this big, huge talent show my junior year. It was a 3.5 hour long talent show. It might have even been 4 hours. It was so long. Mm-hmm. The entire school went, but it was so long that even though it was so long, mostly everybody stayed to the end, but at some point people started to leave because it was so long. Mm-hmm. She didn't separate the categories. Everybody was against everybody. So you can imagine 3.5 to 4 hours worth of talent.
Right.
Of people singing, dancing, acting, doing poetry, juggling, you name it, tricks, magician, that's acts, all kind of stuff. We're all going against each other. And that's the part that really tripped me out, because I was just like, why is she not breaking this down into categories, right? Singers against singers, comedians against comedians, dancers against dancers. No, it was like almost like an America's Got Talent kind of thing, right? And it was the first big talent show that Kenwood had in a long time. This other girl named...
So that was 1983? That was 1983? Is that your junior year? Okay, got it.
Yeah, my junior year. And Tammy McCann, I think, was the girl's name that was in choir with us. And R. Kelly was in choir with us. And he had not been in as long as we were because he was a couple of years behind me.
Mm-hmm.
So he wasn't as behind me in age because I skipped a grade, but he was behind me in grade levels.
Right.
So he sang Ribbon in the Sky. I sang Home from the Wiz. And the girl, Tammy, she sang Evergreen by Barbra Streisand. What's crazy, all of us in the choir, those two were her teacher's pets because they hung out with her in between classes.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I hung out with my best friend at the time, Berta. I was not, hanging out like that. So I started to sing Evergreen and changed my mind at the last minute.
Wow.
And decided to go with the Home by Stephanie Mills from The Wiz.
Right.
But I sang the Diana Ross version.
Interesting.
From the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And Tammy and I tied for first place off of 4 hours worth of talent.
Wow.
And he got second place with Ribbon in the Sky. And that was the first time that anybody had ever really heard him sing.
Because he was a freshman anyway. So if you were a junior, he was probably a freshman or sophomore.
Yeah. And not a lot of people knew him because he was kind of quiet and shy.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, all the girls just crazy about him because, he literally sounded just like Stevie Wonder.
Wow.
I mean, back then he had a beautiful voice. But Tammy, she had a beautiful voice too because she sang the heck out of Evergreen.
Wow.
It was amazing. I was like, wow, beautiful. I didn't think that I would tie with her. I thought she was going to get it for sure. Mm-hmm. But I tied with her.
Clearly, you were super talented, and I'm so happy we've already escalated into the Kenwood years. Okay, so at Kenwood, so your family sings, so that's a positive because they can see that talent and encourage it, etc. Because I always wonder about some people. It's like my family, and my father could sing really well, my sister could sing really well. My sister's like a librarian, and she doesn't open her mouth, right? I didn't get the voice. What a tragedy, because I would have been just singing like crazy if I could sing. But when I think about that, no one would have encouraged me anyway. My parents would have been like, what is she doing? She's not a singer. So it's great that you have that encouragement. You get to high school, you join the choir. How so you had clearly some talented people in your sort of realm. How do you get to the point where you're saying, you know what, I'm going to find a studio, or you're going to, all of a sudden, do people come to you and say, could you record on my new track? Or how do you get to the point where you're now recording songs that might be pressed into records?
Okay, so that's another weird story. So my father was in advertising. over 40 something years in advertising.
What's his name?
Philip Salter.
Philip Salter.
Bill Salter. So he works for everybody, Burrell and, all of the major advertising agencies, right, that existed. And at one point, he was vice president of Soft Sheen Advertising, and he worked with Morris Communications. You name pretty much all of the major advertising agencies, he worked for them. He graduated from the Art Institute, the school of the Art Institute downtown. With the
right, yeah.
So in the '60s, so people are calling me, wishing me happy birthday. Okay, that's good. You want to go on the voicemail? Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Put my phone on silent. Okay. Oh, that's the pizza. Hold on. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Hello?
Hi, this is the delivery driver from Serpinos. I'm in front of your door.
Oh, okay. My son is coming.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. Sorry.
That's
Gotta
okay.
answer that. I was like, hey, Lowe's, wait a minute. That's the pizza.
That's food right there. We got to get that.
Yeah. Tell him to put a tip on there. Oh. Ask Edward. Okay. All right. So my son, my husband. Okay. So, so my dad was in advertising.
Yeah.
And because he was usually like a vice president most of the times, he was usually, as he progressed from agency to agency, he would get higher and higher, right?
Right.
So Chip Eberhart, or Chip E, as everybody knows him, his mother worked with my father in advertising.
I love his mom. Great story.
Oh, you know her?
I met her and interviewed her because she's got a great, rich story too, about sort of back in that day with advertising. She spent a little time at Northwestern in class around that. So it was she's just a brilliant young woman. Go ahead. Oh, a brilliant woman. Go ahead.
Okay. I agree. So, I've known Chip since we were little kids.
What do you mean by little kids? Where would you have met Chip as a little kid?
Because his mom worked with my dad. So because they work together, if you know anything about advertising, they spend long hours doing what they're doing till 8, 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night. Mm-hmm. So sometimes, my parents split up when I was 4. Okay. But I saw my dad every weekend. I was with my dad every single weekend. Because at that time, I didn't have any siblings. My mother didn't have any other kids, and my dad didn't have any other kids. So I didn't get siblings until I got till later on. Right? So I grew up as an only child. Mm-hmm. So when my dad would have stuff he'd have to do and it was his weekend to get me, I would just go with him to work or go with him wherever he was doing. And I'd be in there. And so sometimes Chip would be with his mom. That's how we became friends when we were 7, 8 years old. And then we would do silly stuff play games, make balls out of rubber cement, do, little silly kid games, right? But then I used to write my own songs. My father would encourage me to write. Nice. Even though I was a child, he was like, you should write, because I would write poems all the time. And he was like, try writing a song. So I wrote this song, it's so corny, called Hey Little Goldfish. At the time, that was the only pet I had, was the goldfish. So I wrote this song about this goldfish. Don't ask me the goldfish name, have no idea. But I wrote a song and I was singing it, and I sang it to Chip, and he liked the song. And I don't know why. That's stuck in his brain all the way through high school. So we went to high school together. We went to Kenwood together. Good. And then the summer, I want to say the summer after my freshman year, or maybe it was the summer before. No. It was the summer right after we graduated. Yeah. Right. So freshman year when I came back from Northwestern. And then he came over my house and was like, yo, you still writing songs? And I was like, how you remember that? He's like, remember that song you wrote when we were kids? I was like, oh my God, are you kidding me, dude? For real? And he's like, yeah. He's like, I remember, it was pretty good for a kid. And I was like, yeah, I still write. I could still write. And he was like, well, I'm doing this new thing, and we're making music, and it's called house music. And I was like, okay. And he's like, so I need somebody to write the lyrics. You know, I don't do that. I just do the music. I'll do the music. If you could write the song and then sing it, we could go and record it, and then it'll be pressed into a record. And I was like, okay. I was like, who's paying for all of this? And he's like,
Right.
you know, don't worry about it. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to pay for it. Just show up, be there, you know, come with me or whatever. And I was like, okay, when do I need to write the song? And he's like, the same day we go. And I was like, okay, what's it about? And he goes, well, the title is Like This. I said, what kind of song am I supposed to write about that? I
Right.
was like, that's not real. You didn't give me a real topic to, like, what am I writing? He's like, well, it's about the club and the disco and dancing and, you know, come up with something. Really? Those are my parameters? Like this? He's like, yeah, because I'm using this sample. And he goes, la 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 like this, la 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 like this, and like this. And I was like, you would have to make it difficult. I was like, okay. So we're in the studio.
So
And
stop. What studio were you at? Where's that studio?
it was in Dwayne Tham's basement. It was in his house. So I have no idea. I don't know what side of town it was, but it was in his basement. And
Dwayne Thams?
Tham, yeah, THAMM.
Where's he at now? You know where Dwayne Tham is now?
Nope.
No. So I
I caught
always
up
like,
with him like not that long ago, like maybe about. I caught up with Dwayne probably maybe 8 to 10 years ago, but ever since then, no.
got it.
He might even be one of my Facebook friends. I got 5,000 friends, so I have no idea. You know what I mean? Like I got that many friends. It's impossible to go through all of those friends to see who you're friends with, who you're not friends with. And half the time, I don't even know who I'm friends with until they make a comment on my page, and I'm like, oh, I'm friends with you. You know what I mean?
Kim, it's tough to be popular. It's tough to have so many friends, isn't it, Kim? You got all those friends, girl.
those
You
are
don't even know
really-
that.
Right. I mean, and some of those people are legitimately friends of mine, and some of
Mhm.
those people I don't even know. I've never even met them. Don't even like I couldn't pick them out on the street. Now, if you show me their Facebook profile, I'll go, "Oh yeah." Then the name might ring a bell,
Right.
but I don't
right.
know a lot of these people because some of these people are halfway around the world, and they only befriended me because of the record. And then I don't discriminate unless you do something that really rubs me the wrong way. Like being a Trump supporter, that's a no-go for me, you know, and racist or misogynistic, or, you know, you a man and you posting these pictures of yourself with no clothes on your Facebook page. I don't want to be friends with you. You know, you're a pervert.
They're
So,
out.
you know,
They're out.
right. I pretty much accept friendship requests from everybody that I can, but then Facebook limits you. So then I can't add people until somebody else drops off.
Right, that's true. All right, so I'm going back. So you're in the basement of Dwayne Tham's. Yeah, that's the studio. Did it look like a real studio, or did it look like the basement?
No, it looked like he had a really nice house and he had a real nice basement studio.
Nice,
I mean,
okay.
it was a nice basement studio. I mean, he had, you know, quality microphones and equipment and, you know, somewhat of a sound booth, you know, probably not as sophisticated as some standards, you know, but enough, you know,
Enough.
and I didn't have very much time to write the song. I wrote the song in like 5 minutes.
Interesting. So you get down there, you, Chip, Dwayne, anyone else there?
I want to say, I don't know, maybe Rocky
Okay,
from DJ International. He might have been there.
got it.
You know,
got it.
I all of that is kind of a blur.
Got it. Which is why we do the show, because we just want to see if we can recreate sort of that environment and make people remember about sort of how these things came about. Certainly iconic songs like yours. So you go to with Chip somewhere. You don't even know where you're going. So you get to somewhere, Dwayne's studio, and he says, "Finish the rest of the song." Or did you already? So you just started to write it within that amount of time in 5
No, I
minutes.
wrote it at his house in his basement. I didn't write anything beforehand. He was, he kind of played the music, a little bit of it, and the sample. He had
Mhm.
played it in the basement of his house, on his keyboard. But I didn't actually write the song until
You
that
got that.
day.
What did you think
Yeah,
about the
and
track when you heard it?
I liked it a lot.
Because were
You
you
know,
a
I
house
just
music person? Were you a disco, house music, funk person at that time? Because house music was just birthing. Were you one of those people who loved house music, or were you into other types of music at that time?
I loved all kinds of music, but I liked disco, funk, punk music. I love that anyway because that's mainly all I danced to all throughout high school. You know what I mean? Like I used to go
Exactly.
to
Yeah.
I went to the Mendel parties. So
Of
I went to
course.
all of the Mendel parties, the basement parties. I went to, parties that I shouldn't have gone to, the warehouse, places that I shouldn't have been. My mother didn't know I was there.
Right.
She didn't
Nobody's
know
parents
until
knew they were there.
right. She didn't know until I was an adult. Like I remember going to was it the warehouse? It was somewhere. One of these places where they don't serve any alcohol. They didn't serve any alcohol. It was just water. All these water containers. It looked like a cave,
Right.
but
Right.
it was all night long until the next day. So when you emerged from there, you didn't even know that it was daylight until you came outside. So you would go at like 12 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, and you coming out at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And the only reason I got away with that is because I spent the night over my girlfriend's house. I had 3 friends that I hung out with, you know, and I would hang out with them and we would sneak and go to these parties. And then I remember going, and I didn't do drugs in high school. Kenwood was like a drug capital. You could get any drug you wanted from people there if you wanted to. I just was too much of a bookworm and too nerdy and just didn't get into that. I didn't even really drink or smoke cigarettes. So my friends, they all did drugs, right?
Really? I'm
Not
starting to just
Chip,
see your face again. Put your camera back down.
not Chip, but
Other
my
people.
female friends and other people that I went to high school with. Some of them did drugs. My best friend did not,
Okay.
but they refused to tell me. They didn't tell me until the next day that they were putting drugs in the water to keep you up so you could stay up and dance all night. So I couldn't, and the only thing you could buy there were like fruit, cut up fruit, and juice, juice like smoothies and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I couldn't understand how I was able to stay up all night to the next day and I wasn't even the least bit tired. And
Wow.
I just wanted to dance, 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 dance. I remember going into this club and coming out at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and seeing my cousin going in. And my cousin is like 2 or 3 years older than me. He went to Mendel and he was like, "Ooh, I'm telling Beverly." And I was like, "Oh my God, I'm going to kill you." I was like, "No, do not tell her because then my life is over. You tell her." And I was like, begging him.
Right.
He was always, one of those would always be trying to tease me all the time. But I went in the club with some pastel pink jeans and a pastel pink cable knit sweater that came to my waist. When I left the club, my pastel pink jeans were no longer pink. They were purple. And my pink sweater that was pastel was fuchsia and was hanging down to my knees full of sweat.
Oh my God.
That's how much I danced. And I was wide awake. But that was the thing. That was the kind of, the house music. And it didn't have that phrase necessarily yet. But
Right.
that's what it was. And that's what we were like obsessed with it. I mean, like every party, that's what they played. It's a certain type of music. It's a certain way that you dance and dress and act. And that's what it was the whole time I was in high school. So I would go from these parties and that's what we would do. So it was a little different singing it because it was not like, like some of the more soulful stuff. It was a different kind of sound because it was a Chicago sound.
Right.
So I liked it instantly. It just was different than what I was used to. You know what I mean?
Yes.
If that makes sense.
That
I'm
absolutely
coming
makes
across the
sense.
right way.
So you wrote the song, and then let's get to the process of creating a new house music track. So you've already written the song, and clearly, so you're writing it and producing it as well. Or is he telling you how to sing what you've already written, or did you just come up with the melodies? How did you come up with creating that
No,
song?
Chip didn't tell me how to sing because Chip trusted that I knew how to sing.
Got
You
it.
know, he knows. He'd seen me sing as a kid. He had witnessed me sing in Kenwood Academy. He had seen me in the talent show, most likely. You know what I mean? He had seen me too many times, and he knew that I was professional enough to know what I was doing. They don't let you have solos, and Miss McLean would not let you be a solo artist in her choir, and Chicago Children's Choir is not going to let you be a solo artist if you can't actually sing.
That's
So
true.
he trusted, well, you wrote it, you should know how to sing it, right? I mean, there might be a little bit of producing in terms of like, some ad libs here and there, but the structuring of the song and how it was, the song didn't have the typical format where there was a specific breakdown or so that you could structure like a song usually will have an intro, it'll have a verse, it'll have a chorus, and it'll have another verse, and it might have a chorus, and it'll have a bridge. It
Right.
wasn't structured like that. It's structured as a club song. So it's just the same beat with some changes here and there, and it just comes when it comes. It's not a matter of it being in a specific place where you can say, oh, there's where the chorus should go, and that's where the verse should go. So I literally kind of had to write the song to the music, make it fit. But then a little bit of,
Got it.
so.
So how'd you feel sort of making that first song? Was that your first time in the studio?
Yeah, that was my first time. Yeah, that was my first time in the studio by myself. Yeah.
Got it. How'd you feel about that? What are you? So now you're 15 or 16? How old are you?
No, at that point, I was 18.
18, okay.
Yeah, because remember, I was a freshman.
Oh, right.
I went to Northwestern at 17. And
Oh.
then I made the record that summer afterwards. So I had just turned 18.
So you're 18 years old. So you're almost,
Yeah.
you feel grown anyway, because you're about to be super grown. So you're good. So that's exciting though. So you're in the studio, you're making the song with Dwayne, Chip, maybe Rocky, maybe some other people, and people are Rocky Jones, who was the head of DJ International, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So you write the song.
I wasn't excited. I wasn't necessarily excited because I didn't understand the gravity of it, of the whole thing. Like,
Right.
To me, it was more like, oh, this is fun. Like, it was like a hobby. Like, it was like, oh, this is cool. It's something to do. All right, cool. Thanks for bringing me in on this, Chip. All right, dude. Talk to you later. You know what I mean?
Right.
It was not like, I had no expectations whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
And I had no clue that it would go where it went or that it would have the effect on people that it has. I'm still, to this day, I have no earthly idea why, for the life of me, that people love this song so much. I'm still baffled by it. To me, because I'm not trying to downplay the song. The song is great, but I guess I'm just, I don't know. I'm just a little, I guess I've always been perplexed by the appeal to the level of the appeal. You know what I mean? Because like I literally have been on the other side of the world. People, that's what I'm on, and I'm in the crowd, watching people's reactions and they lose their minds. And I'm just like, if they only knew. I was in the military and I was on an army base in an NCO club and in what was I? North Carolina or Bragg. And I went to a party on base. And then another time at Fort Knox in Kentucky. And I'm looking around and I'm dancing, and all of a sudden they're like, okay, the DJ's like, now it's the house music segment. This is the house music for all you people from Chicago, New York, and all these different places. And I'm like, okay, cool, you about to play house music. All right, yeah, you know, dancing. All of a sudden my song comes on and the whole dance floor, I'm getting almost knocked over. Like, you know, it's a weird feeling.
I can imagine. When you heard it?
You don't, when you're 18, you don't know that. You don't realize that that's coming. You don't have any idea of what's in store for you in the future. To you, you're just like, oh, this is really cool. I'm writing this song and singing it. Okay, cool. You're never going to think, I never in a million years thought it would be on the radio. I never in a million years thought I would be touring, performing, or any of that. I never thought that it would be, you know, Billboard Top 100, peaking in 15 on the dance charts for Billboard. I never thought that, and I never thought later on down the line, you know, in the 2000s, that they would have the record featured in the Chicago Cultural Museum, you know, for the Move Your Body exhibit. The evolution of house music. I never thought that these things would happen ever in a million years when I did that song that night.
Well, let's talk about sort of what you first remember about. Did you hear your record in the club or on the radio first, or did you see the pressing of the record first?
I saw the pressing of the record first because they gave us our first copy.
So who gave you the first copy?
Rocky gave Chip.
Tell me about your first.
Black pressing.
Yeah, black pressing. A test pressing of that. So your screen is going in and out for some reason. But talk to me about your first meeting. What do you remember about Rocky Jones when you first met him? What do you remember? When was that? Where were you?
It was at DJ International when Chip took me there.
Okay, so he took you there. And was that when you got the record, or was that after you did your studio time?
No, it was after the studio time. It was before the record. Because, you know, you have to sign paperwork to be on a label. I signed up with BMI. And then I signed some paperwork, you know, regarding, you know, his ability to get a certain percentage for record sales. And then, you know, of course, I insisted, you know, that my name be on copyright, you know, forms, because I wrote those lyrics and I sang them. See, here's the thing. A lot of people are like, oh, you know, especially DJs. Oh, you the vocalist? You the singer of like this. Half the time, for many, many years, people didn't even know my name at all. All they knew was Chippy. Chippy, 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 Chippy. That's my friend. And that's cool. But I'm the other half of that record. Otherwise, it's just an instrumental song. So, yeah, I need to get, and that's what ticked me off about the first pressing. The first pressing just had Chip's name. And my name was in small print and spelled wrong.
Yes, I saw that.
It was not spelled Salter. It was spelled Sutton.
Sutton, yeah.
S-U-T-T-O-N. That's not my last name. How you get my name wrong on a record? I was pissed.
Good.
And I was like, no, this is not flying. I want records with my name on it too. So then they pressed some records that said K Joy only. And then Chip's name was only in little fine print. And I was like, what the heck? Put both of our names on the freaking record. What is the problem? So then it turned out there was another pressing of Chip E featuring K Joy. I could live with that because it was his record to begin with, and he featured me, and I wrote the song and I sang it. But half the time, for many, many years. And even to this day, DJs are like, oh yeah, you sang like this. And even people who interview me, oh, you're the singer of like this. No, let's get it straight. I am a songwriter and I wrote the lyrics. I arranged the melody. I wrote and sang and arranged that whole song. So yeah, you need to give me credit where credit's due because I'm still receiving royalty checks for my songwriting.
Very
and that's
good.
important. You know,
That's critical.
it is. You know, unfortunately, in the house music arena, and I don't know if it happens as much in New York as it does here, there has been this tendency a lot of times to minimize the role of women in house music, in my opinion, the lack of respect, you know, and so, you know, that I will always correct people every chance I get, you know, and let them know. No,
That's
it's
important.
I'm not just a singer.
And you know, we may air this in February, but March is Women's Month, and we're doing an entire feature with sort of particular types of artists around music in March for the show. And I think that's an important thing to point out, that oftentimes if you know, again, sometimes vocalists don't get everything they should get. When I think about Marshall Jefferson and his song with Curtis McLean, people never know who Curtis McLean is. You know, I think that it's important that you understand the business of the music business and understand that it's fun. Certainly when you're young, it's fun, but you knowing what you knew already. But what did you know? Who did you take with you to sign those papers, number one? And then number two, you signed with BMI. How did you know how to do that? Did someone tell you to do that? Give me some details on what you knew when you went in to meet with an adult man, Rocky Jones.
My parents did not go with me. My parents, I didn't really actively involve my parents because to me, this was just some hobby thing.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't take it as seriously as I should have. And because I didn't present it to them as something that was serious, and I presented to them as like, oh, this is some cool thing I'm doing. That's the way they took it. And they didn't get involved. They didn't get involved with it either. So I really was kind of flying blind and on my own. But I did know enough to know that if you're writing a song, you need to be signed up with BMI or ASCAP at the very least. There are a couple of other PROs, those are performing rights organizations, but there are some other ones that are out there that you can join. But back in that era, it was just BMI and ASCAP in the United States. So I remember somebody, I don't remember exactly who it was, but some friend of mine was like, you need to be registered with BMI.
Nice.
And I was like, why? And they're like, if you don't, you're not going to get paid for your songwriting. So at that point, I was like, okay. So I did that. And I knew enough on my own about copyrights to know that I needed to be on the forms. So when he first tried to Rocky tried to fill out copyright forms, and he tried to not have our names on it. I said, no, what are you doing? And I said, no, I'm not signing anything. And I said, this is our song, our name. Our names are going to be on that copyright form. Plain and simple. So I kind of fought for that. And it ended up being a good thing because some other stuff transpired later. And had I not done that, I would not have even been able to reverse some underhanded things that Mr. Jones was doing.
Got it. Talk about that scene. Talk about the business scene. There are a lot of house music professionals that I'm calling you all house music professionals at that time, even though you're 18, 19, 20 years old. People are traveling all over the place. You are professionals. What kind of representation did everyone have? Did anyone have lawyers? A lot of people were always mad at JB Ross, or some people loved JB, some people hated JB. They didn't think that they were getting, records were going overseas and people were still not getting paid here in Chicago. What was the scene in that way? What do you remember about that and how people were trying to scale up their knowledge of the business of music while you were sort of still in it and creating?
Really, honestly, what I remember the most is always feeling ostracized and marginalized. Like you just some little young girl, you know, let the big boys handle this. You know, this is the boys club. Let the men handle this. And that's how it always felt. So there was no one on my side, you know, and it was just, I was over here, Chip was over there. You know what I mean? Chip would try to do stuff and advocate, but I think even he got the short end of the stick with a lot of things. I think he knew a little bit more than I did because he was a little bit more accepted because he was a man, young man, but he was still a man. There were certain things that I just kind of just got shut out of. And it that was why I ended up leaving and I stopped singing altogether. You know, I didn't sing anything for many, many years. So
that's what's a tragedy, because again, I think sometimes things hit you so hard where you realize you've been disenfranchised and, you know, disrespected a little bit, you feel like, so you're like, I'm done with it all. But I'm going to take it back a little bit too, because you have a lot going on in that time frame. You saw your song being pressed first, then where did you hear it first?
On the radio.
Do you know what radio station you heard it on and who was playing it?
Hot Mix 5.
You remember which Hot Mix 5 DJ was playing it? Was it Farley or somebody else, you think?
It wasn't Farley.
Okay.
Farley, I don't think played it first. It was might have been Ralph and Rosario, or might have been Steve Silk Hurley. I don't know. It was somebody.
One of those people.
It wasn't Farley who broke it first. It was somebody else in the Hot Mix 5 that broke it. And I remember in my house, this because I listened all the time.
Like everybody did.
Reason, I would listen to tape, you know, on my little cassettes.
That's true.
And I remember hearing it, and I went and got my mother like, Mom, my song's on the radio. She was like, what? And I was like, yeah, like freaking out. And then next thing I knew, it was always on the radio. Like, that was back in the day when house music was played all day long on the radio. It wasn't just certain times of the day, one at lunchtime only, and then only on the weekend. It was every night, and it was all throughout the day.
So 1985, you hear your song in the house for the first time with your mother. What did you all do? Did you call other people? Like, did y'all just dance? Like, what was the fan out on sort of hearing that song for the first time in your mother's house?
I think we were just dancing around. I think I might have called my dad, and that was about it. I might have called my best friend, Berta. Mm-hmm. But that was, wasn't like I was, I just remember hearing it and kind of freaking out, about it.
Okay.
And yeah.
So that's interesting. So you always wonder, like, do people go out in the street and yell, everybody turn on the radio right now? That kind of thing. Like, do you do anything crazy like that? But then you're also a busy person. So in 1985, during that time, I don't know if you remember if there was a summer or what month it was, but were you in school? Were you at Northwestern?
When I recorded the song?
No, when the first time you heard it.
Yeah, I think I was. I was at Northwestern, but I think I was home when I heard it. Like, I think it was on the weekend. Because I used to go home sometimes for the weekend. I just happened to be home.
Got it.
I don't remember exactly when it was or what month or any of that. I just remember it was nighttime.
Gotcha. And so why attend Northwestern? Why go to Northwestern? Clearly you're on the honor roll. You are killing it at Kenwood. You come out of school. And again, clearly most people go to college. They do one or two. They go to college, they go to the military, they get a job. Why go to Northwestern? Why did you choose Northwestern at that time?
Well, I applied to like 5 or 6 different schools. My mother wanted me to go to Spelman, and I was like, an all-girls school? No way, I'm not doing that. And at the time, My grandparents had they when I was in high school, they sold the Dove on 57th Street and retired and moved to Nashville, Tennessee. And so I applied to Vanderbilt because my grandparents lived there, and I used to go visit them during the summer. So I applied to Vanderbilt. I applied to Spelman because my mother made me. I applied to University of Rochester in New York, and I applied to Northwestern, and then one other school I applied to. I got into all the schools that I applied to. But the real choice was down to Vanderbilt, University of Rochester, and Northwestern. So I ruled out University of Rochester because I heard that they get a lot of snow, like heavy snow, more than we do. And I ruled out Vanderbilt because although I would visit my grandparents in the summer, I felt it was kind of slow in Tennessee. And I feel like, yeah, I'd be near my grandparents, but I didn't feel like I would enjoy the experience as much because I felt like it would be a little too country and too slow for me. So I thought, well, I'll go to Northwestern because I can be far enough away from my mother and my father to be independent, but close enough to go home and get a hot meal if I needed to.
Right.
So,
right.
And, I could still see some of my friends. I still had a best friend who lived in the city. He went to trade school. So I would see Raymond. He was just my friend. And he lived on the south side, so I could still come home and kick it. You know what I mean? So it was close enough, but yet far enough.
Got it.
So
your song comes out. Your song comes out. You're a student. You've got other things going on. How did that change a little bit of your life at that time? Once people started to recognize, or people started to tell you, like, I've heard the song, God sounds like you. What happened? How did your friends hear? How did people know that was you on the song, on the record? And how did it affect you? How did it impact you, if it did at all?
People that went to Kenwood knew because somehow it got out. I don't know if it got out because of Chip. There was a lot of people that were affiliated with DJ International who either went to Whitney Young or Kenwood at that time. So somehow it got out that I graduated from Kenwood. And then and people knew me. I didn't hang with the clique, but I knew a lot of people, and a lot of people knew me. So even though I didn't necessarily hang with any one set group or another, I knew all of the cliques. I knew everybody, right. Because I was into so many different things. I ran track, and then I was in pep squad, and then I was busy. I was active. Then I hung out with some upperclassmen, so I stayed. People knew me. And then at Northwestern, I was in Northwestern Community Ensemble. Oh. So people in the the NU ensemble knew I had made this record, because I told somebody, and then of course everybody knew. Then being an AKA, all my ships knew, and the whole chapter knew. And then, of course, I was Kappa Sweetheart first before I became an AKA. So my whole court, so that means so our court, the Kappa Sweetheart court that I was on, half the court went AKA and half the court went Delta. And we all remained friends. Right. So they all knew. And then people who were from the south side of Chicago and from the hood and from different areas, they knew too. So everybody knew somehow or another. They knew I was K Joy, Kimberly Joy Salt. Joy came from. He is Chip Eberhard. So I guess, word of mouth, it travels. It got out. people knew. And then I hung out at the Black House all the time. So everybody at the Black House knew. So between all of these different groups that I was affiliated with, it kind of got out. And then, it was overwhelming, exhilarating, but kind of weird. You know what I mean? Like it's you don't know what to do. Feel like it was I don't know. It was just a very odd feeling. It's an odd feeling to, number one, hear yourself in a club or to hear yourself in a party, to see other people having so much fun and dancing to something that you've done. It humbles you to a certain degree every time I hear it. And every time I see that kind of reaction, it makes me feel like, wow, I can have that effect on people. That is so cool. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's humbling because it's like, wow, it's just nice to bring some joy to somebody in some kind of way, even though I may not even know them. Like I went to, my cousin is an AKA, and she had her 50th birthday party at the place where her chapter meets over there off of, it's on the south side. It's not off Cottage. What is it off of? What street is it off of? It's like near Inglewood.
Okay.
So she had this huge party, and it was just all women, only women. And I usually don't get into stuff that's just strictly just all women. I know that's weird being in the sorority that I'm saying that. I know.
Really anyway, man, I need men at all my stuff. No bunch of chicks. Right. That's just not my thing.
Right. Okay. So it's not my kind of thing either. Right. And so I'm just like, a girls' party. What would you do that, Angie? But it turned out to be fun. The only man that was there was the DJ. And of course, he plays my song. And then my cousin is like, that's my cousin. You're a soror. And I was like, really, Angie? And so some girl who was there who wasn't an AKA, because, she had people, all women, but they weren't all AKAs. It was people from all different places, did walks of life, people that she knew. And this woman, she walks up to me and she's like, oh my God, I have to get your picture. Can I take a picture with you? Can I get your signature? You know how old I am? Really, girl? And I was me. And I was like, sure, we can take a picture. But I got to go home and tell my friends and blah, blah, blah. I'm that K-Joy say like that. And it just trips me out. And then like my mother lived in Australia for 3 years with my sister.
Oh, wow.
And my mother was out somewhere and in a store, like a regular store where you buy clothes and stuff like that. And I don't know how they got on this subject. He asked her where she was from. And she's like, oh, I'm from Chicago. And he goes, really? The birthplace, with his Australian accent, right? Good day, And he's like, yeah, it's the birthplace of house music. And she's like, yeah. And then he goes, yeah. He's like, my favorite house music is Like This by K-Joy and Chippy. And she goes, are you serious?
I know, exactly.
Like, that's my daughter. And then he goes, what? Oh my God, it's your daughter. Oh my Lord, you're royalty. You're famous. And my mom was like, she's like, you're not gonna believe what happened today. She FaceTimed me. And I thought that was hilarious. She's like, I'm on the other side of the world and this man knows your song. And I was like, I couldn't believe it. This is a white guy. So it just really, it's a mixed bag of emotions you get. Even now, so many years later, it's just a strange thing. I don't know how Chip feels about it or how it makes him feel. But for me, it's a good thing, the effect that it has on the people that love the song. It's a bad thing based upon my experiences behind what happened after I made the song. That makes sense.
It does make sense. And, we're not going to go all into, it's already 4:30, so I don't want to tape this later. It's already been about an hour and a little bit over that. So And we will maybe dive into a part 2 of this where we can get into the after of that. But I do want to, the reason why that's an important question, Kim, is because no, not everyone understands sort of what you experienced by recording a song. First of all, having the talent to sing. Not everyone can do that. It's a blessing. It's a gift from God. It's able that, it's fantastic you're able to use that to bring other people joy. But then to know you did some work, some hard work, you wrote a song, you produced a song, you allowed the song to be published, and it's out there in the world, and it brought a lot of people joy. Not everyone knows how it feels to hear your own song or your own artwork, whatever it is, and experience how it makes people feel, and the good and the bad of that. So that's why that's a sort of an important question to ask. It's like, I understand it is hard to sort of, to talk about exactly what those feelings are, because you're a little bit of a celebrity. If it's kind of a interesting Chicago celebrity on the short term when you first hear it while you're here, but that is a global house music classic. That when people are looking at the top, 100 songs in house music to listen to, if you want to understand the birth of house music, they're going to talk about like this. And, you as the songwriter and vocalist, you're an important part of house music history. So we are